Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 229 of the Canadian Football Countdown, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network. Ryan and Adam with you here this evening. We're going to preview Week 18 in the CFL, take a look at major storylines from around the league this week, make our betting picks for each of the games that have odds available. Stay tuned for more on that. And also take a look at fantasy players to watch or not to watch this week in the CFL. Adam, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good, Ryan. Starting to get a little cooler outside. Definitely the weather's starting to change into the more football playoff kind of weather. And yeah, it's going to be a busy season right away here. You got all the sports running, and it's cool to see the CFL is starting to wind down to get into the real playoff mode. So some exciting stuff coming up down the road here. So.
Yes, very excited about the upcoming playoffs. I feel like we're in that time at the end of the regular season. You know, we're getting into some playoff scenarios mode, which we're going to talk about all of the ones for this week coming up. Playoff spots are locked in. Some teams are getting close to getting eliminated. I'm ready for the playoffs to come. I'm ready for the excitement of that. But is some exciting football to be played over the next couple of weeks as well, and some really fun matchups, I think, this week. We are also live on a variety of different platforms here tonight, thanks to presenting sponsor Game Time TV, which you can learn more about at GameTimeTV.ca or Facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. We'll take your comments, we'll take your questions in the chat throughout the night, so feel free to throw them out in there if you're joining us live as well. And before we go any further, we do want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. One more housekeeping note before we begin the show. If you're looking for additional content on top of our weekly episodes, you know what I'm about to say. If you tune in regularly, check out the CFC Discord community. We've got a link in the episode description. It's free to join. And we've got live game chats going on, lots of CFL fantasy talk, prop bets thrown out in there a lot. NFL talk is quite the hot topic these days. Toronto Blue Jays talk. That's awkward. Yeah, no, that might be dead after today. But lots of fun in the Discord community, so check that out and join us and other listeners in the conversation there. Let's get, without further ado, let's get into previewing our storylines for this week, and we'll talk about the 4 games on the schedule here in a second, but obviously there was some big, unfortunate, sad news that came out this week of a CFL and Riders legend, Adam.
Yeah, George Reed, unfortunately, passed away on October 1st. He was one day away from being 84 years old. If you know anything about Mr. Reed, he was a legend in the province. He was a guy that pretty much did a pile of things for the entire province and the community in Saskatchewan and Regina. Was one of the best running backs there really was out there. I mean, he had a 13-year career, all with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. 203 games played, had 16,116 yards in his career, 134 touchdowns. He has average of 5 yards a carry, but I mean, the guy there was unstoppable for many years. A multi-CFL all-star, a multi-award winner, won the Grey Cup of the Riders' first Grey Cup, along with Ronnie Lancaster in 1966. Just a legend in the community, and definitely going to be missed around Riderville. I mean, he would come to every game no matter what. Even when he got a little bit older here, he was still at every game that he could possibly be at in Saskatchewan. The guy there, again, a legend throughout the CFL, but definitely a legend in Saskatchewan, and for all the contributions he did even after the game of football for George Reed. So any Saskatchewan fans, they're going to have there's 2 things to honor him this weekend here. He is going to have a celebration of life on Friday, 1 to 1:30, upstairs in the international trade area in Regina. So that's in the Regina exhibition building there. So all Rider fans are invited for that. And also, they're going to definitely do some tributes and everything as well. This game originally was going to be for just the 13th man in 2013. They were going to do an honor for all the 2013 players, and most of them are coming back. But this is also now turned into a little bit of also for George Reed. So they asked that you wear all the green like George would have wanted. So that's what Rider Nation's known for. Wear your green and come celebrate the memory of George Reed. Ryan, being a Winnipeg fan, I'm sure maybe you might not have dealt with George Reed very much, but any memories or anything you know of back in the old days when Winnipeg and Saskatchewan used to play?
I wish I did. I wish I had stories to tell here, but to be honest, I knew nothing. I know nothing really about George Reed because I'm not great on CFL history. I want to say I got into the CFL starting as a casual fan around 2006, 2007, and kind of in the early 2010s is when I really started to become more of a fan. And I just haven't picked up on all of that history stuff. So, when we talk about these legendary players, like I know they're legendary. I just don't know anything. I never saw them play. I don't have any knowledge from the past, but all the stats you just listed off, all the stories people have been telling like this week since the news broke. George Reed was a foundational part of the CFL and CFL history, and it's a huge loss for the league and the riders community, and obviously for family and friends and everyone as well. So our condolences to all the family and friends of the Reed family.
Yeah, I mean, I know that he still was out there talking to current players. I know Jeremy O'Day for his 80th birthday took him out to just go and tour the field, and it was quite a neat little thing. He's got this one street actually named after him right beside the new Mosaic Stadium. It's George Reed Way. So yeah, he's going to be definitely missed in the community in this area, and it's a sad situation for the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the entire organization. That being said, I will talk a little bit about what's going to be going on this weekend here. That's the first game I just wanted to kind of get to because there is a lot of playoff implications in that game for both teams. Hamilton.
Well, let me rattle off the 4 matchups for this week, and then We'll go ping pong between the different ones. So we've got a doubleheader. It is Thanksgiving weekend in the CFL, so we've got a doubleheader. Edmonton and Toronto. Edmonton visiting Toronto Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Then Winnipeg and BC, a huge clash for first in the West at 10 p.m. Eastern, same time or same night. Saturday, big game, the Ticats visiting the Riders. The ceremonies you were just talking about going to be taking place at that one. That is Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And then Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern, the Ottawa Red Blacks visit the Montreal Alouettes. I believe a rematch from the week before. So, you know what? We're getting to the point in the season now where we've had 17 weeks of storylines thus far we've talked about, and a lot of kind of the playoff picture is ironing itself out here. So I think the better format we're going to try to go with from here on out for the season is not go game by game and talk about the specifics, because some of these games just won't matter for some of these teams, right? So we're going to kind of ping pong back and forth here with some of our top storylines across the different games throughout the week for the next little while here on the show. And we'll try that out and let us know in the comments, as always, what you think of the format change. But for this week, back to you, Adam. What is the major storyline you wanted to talk about there?
Well, I think the major storylines in these games, I'll go and we'll start off with probably the most important. They're all important games, but the one most important one will be the BC Lions and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. That's a battle for first place. Both teams are tied, I believe, in the standings. I think they're both 11-4, if I'm not mistaken. It's in BC Place Stadium. It's going to be loud. It's going to be rocking. It's apparently nicknamed the Gravy Bowl. Why the Gravy Bowl? Chris, you want to explain that one to me? Or Ryan, do you know? Anyways, it's Zach Collaros, it's Vernon Adams Jr. Both teams are fairly healthy. Uh, you know what? This should be a really, really good football game. Uh, what's the keys for both of these teams here for trying to get that victory or get that one game over the other? Ryan?
So the explanation here from Chris in the chat, the Gravy Bowl, is because whoever wins, it's going to be in sole possession of first place. I'm not sure how that translates to gravy. I'm going to call my own audible here and say it's called the Gravy Bowl because this is going to be a good football game. And gravy's pretty darn good, right? So, it's because it's on Thanksgiving weekend as well. So, like, are we getting, like, is each game this weekend? Can we, if we have time yet, Adam, or maybe can we associate? We have time. We have time. It's fine. We'll go overtime. We do anyways. What food item what Thanksgiving food do we associate with each of the games this week? I guess we got to go with gravy for Winnipeg, BC, but.
Well, I think I was looking at it here. I mean, the other game earlier in this week, or in this on the Friday, is the Toronto Edmonton game. I would probably call that the Cranberry Bowl because one team, it's very, very sweet and they love the taste of it right now. And the other team is just trying to flush out their kidneys and get ready for next season. I mean, like Edmonton right now, I mean, they're coming into a game here where, you know what? I know they're playing a team that's just taking it easy right now, probably a little bit. I'm not sure who's resting or who's anything of that yet because we don't have the rosters yet. I'm sure there'll be some resting players again for the Toronto Argonauts. But, Edmonton's fighting for their lives. I mean, I don't see it happening. I'm sorry, Edmonton. Today was the trade deadline. Nothing was done that I know of. I think this is just a formality. Edmonton needs this win to actually continue their playoff chances. Toronto really doesn't need this win, but it's in Toronto. I mean, I don't know. I can't see anything else coming to this. But that'll be the Cranberry Bowl.
That'll be the Cranberry Bowl. I think we got to give Ottawa Montreal. That's the actual Thanksgiving Monday game, so we can just give that one the Turkey Bowl. I think that one seems fair. And I'm going to go and give Hamilton at Saskatchewan the Stuffing Bowl because looking at some of the names on these two sides, I think they're going to beat the stuffing out of each other. So,
well, Simone Lawrence kind of likes to do that. Pretty much stuff the quarterback quite often, and Jake Dolegala, and let's face it, it could happen for sure. So, yeah, that's appropriate. The Stuffing Bowl.
But that was a fun little side pick or a side story there. I like that. We should come up with new food items to associate with each game every week. Write that down, Ryan, for next season.
Or when we get to Halloween, I guess we can rank our teams by candy.
Oh, perfect. Yes, there we go. We're generating content on the spot while we're producing current content. This is perfect. Back to what you were talking about, Winnipeg, BC. This matchup, the most intriguing thing to me is like we've talked about for weeks that first place in the West is going to come down to this game between these two teams. And then suddenly BC started to trail off a little bit in the middle of the season. And it was, okay, maybe this game won't matter that much. No, now it very much matters. And you look at the previous two matchups, BC throttled Winnipeg in BC early in the season in week 3. And then in week 9, the Bombers hammered the Lions at home in that game. Now, Dane Evans started. VA was injured for that one, and that makes a big difference, I think. But now it is, we've had blowouts on either side. So what does this third meeting bring for these teams? And I don't know I don't know necessarily. These are two good football teams. I mean, it could come down to the battle in the trenches, I think is where it comes down to, because BC had great pressure early in the season, and that's kind of, gone downhill a little bit from their defensive line. And the Bombers last week struggled to contain Cameron Dukes at quarterback and didn't get a single sack on the rookie quarterback there. So VA's got the mobility of his own, and I think that's going to be tough. If they can't get after the quarterback, like that's going to hurt them. So to me, it's a battle in the trenches of can the offensive lines keep these on paper strong D lines away. and can the defensive lines get to the quarterbacks to throw them off, which, kind of brings me, we'll go straight into a similar topic that I have here for you, Adam, which is most outstanding player odds in the CFL. Farhan Lalji posted some from FanDuel earlier today. Chad Kelly is the lead favorite at minus 250. Zach Collaros is plus 250. And Vernon Adams is plus 1,800. To me, that's absurd. To me, Vernon Adams should be just as much, if not more, of an MOP candidate so far this season than Zach Collaros has. I think he's been playing an elite level of football. I know he's had his own turnover problems, but I think VA deserves to be in the nomination, and I think it's probably going to come down to these two guys who are playing each other this week. Who do you give the upper hand? Like, Chad Kelly's got the East nominee locked up, right? So who do you look at as West MOP nominee? Does this week decide it, or is it already decided in your opinion?
In my mind, it's already, well, and again, we have this struggle with our league in senior hockey as well a little bit. Most outstanding player or most valuable player. Most outstanding player, we always define as if that, like, he's just absolutely incredible in a league of his own. It didn't matter. But most valuable player, again, would be who's been contributing most to their team and allowing them to win the most games. If that was the case, it's Vernon Adams hand down on most valuable player. If Vernon Adams ain't there, that team loses instantly. I'll tell you right now, it's not as anywhere near as what it was. And again, I know Richard in the chat, you're going to probably tell me, well, no, that's insane because he should be the most outstanding player. But again, you look at what Collaros does every year. I mean, yeah, he's only got 2 more interceptions, Vernon Adams, than Zach Collaros. But if it's under most valuable, Vernon Adams wins it. If it's under most outstanding, I mean, Collaros is still a very good quarterback and very capable of making those deep passes. His stats are still great for for yardage on plays. Doesn't run the ball. He never did. But and Vernon Adams does have that advantage with him. So I would say most outstanding would be Collaros right now. That being said, this game will decide a lot. But if it's most valuable, there's no question in the league who it is. It's Vernon Adams Jr. Everybody's seen what it looked like with Dane Evans. So
yeah, exactly, right.
And to be honest, right now, if it was East versus West, as much as I don't want to tell Trey this, probably it's Chad Kelly.
I think Kelly would probably get it. I think VA's honestly been better almost than Chad Kelly has at times. Vernon Adams is throwing 300 plus, 400 plus yards almost every single week, it seems, so far this season. But that's not a knock on what Kelly's done so far as well. Another interesting name on here, Brady Oliveira plus 3,700. I would honestly put him as the Bombers nominee over Zach Collaros this year. And maybe I'm just a bit more down on Collaros because of those interceptions. How many of his interceptions have gone back for touchdowns? How many plays has he, fumbled the ball and it's gone back for a touchdown? It feels like his turnovers have been costly at times. And yeah, he's throwing 3-4 touchdowns a game sometimes as well. And he's honestly has more MOP-like numbers this year than he did the past 2 times he won it. So by that definition, yeah, he probably should get it again. But I can't deny what Brady Oliveira has done so far this year at running back. And he's putting up one of the best Canadian running back seasons of all time. Like, nobody now is going to catch what John Cornish did at the height of his career. That's not going to happen. But Oliveira in his second full season as a starter is probably on pace for close to, if not over 1,500 yards on the year. And that's respectable in a league where, a lot of teams have rotated through running backs and to try to find their guy. So I think, yeah, it's probably going to be Kelly gets the overall nod. It's probably going to be Collaros gets the West nominee. But I do like the odds of Vernon Adams and Brady Oliveira. I think they should have stronger consideration than they're getting from the odds makers.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm not the biggest Brady Oliveira fan, obviously. I've been pretty vocal about that. But honestly, this year here, he has proved himself to not be that fourth quarter, okay, fine, let's just get as many yards as we can in the fourth quarter kind of running back. He's been running on teams all night, and It don't matter if it's the fourth, the third, the second, or the first quarter. Brady Oliveira has really proven this year that he could be a very dominant running back in this league. I just look at when was the last time that a running back has won that
That's the
award, which
problem, right?
sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 100% the problem. And, interesting comment here in the chat from Richard. It might depend on how much Chad Kelly plays. If he sits, quite a bit down the stretch of the season, does that take him out of consideration? Because it kind of did for Nathan Rourke for MOP last year, different circumstances. I think Kelly's most outstanding player-like season led to him being able to rest down the stretch, but it will be interesting for sure to see how this plays out and changes down the stretch here. Another storyline that I want to go to here next, and then we'll throw it over back to you for another one after that. The CFL trade deadline passed today. Did you know that was today?
Yep. Yeah, I knew about it today.
Hardly any fanfare because, well, there were no trades. There is no live program because there's nothing to talk about when CFL deadline day comes around. My question to you is, should teams be more active at the deadline than they already are? Or should the CFL change something to make it more exciting? Or does the trade deadline not have to be as exciting as some leagues make it?
Well, I mean, some leagues also have 26 or 32 teams in their league. I mean, there's a lot more ability there to be action. There's a lot more players to deal with. That's why some of these guys I could see doing that. I'd love to see the CFL actually have a trade deadline and try to hype it up a little bit and make sure that people know about it and at least are talking about it at the very least. To me, I thought there could have been some action today. I mean, you look at teams like that are right on the cusp of making a playoff push. For example, Hamilton would be one that I would think of. Could have probably used maybe a backup quarterback. I know that they have some, but that being said, well, I guess FM fan, one of our listeners, will probably be giving me grief right away. But yeah, Bo Levi Mitchell isn't even a backup quarterback anymore. I'm sorry, but nevertheless, I guess he's there. You never know. But it's so hard to make a trade in the CFL also because you're watching your cap at all times. You're making different moves, and there's only so many teams, right? So to me, it's very tough to ever make any real trades. I think the last trade that I could really remember that made any significant impact, well, Bomber fans will be happy because it was for Zach Collaros. They got traded from Toronto over to Winnipeg for pretty much I can't even remember, a bag of apples. Might have also got a bag of chips in it too. Hard to say. But nevertheless, yeah, that one worked out for Winnipeg pretty well.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, just a little. And then the only other one that I can really remember for trades really ever in this thing was in 2013 when the Rough Riders traded for, was it Diamond Ferry or was it somebody else from Brian Hall, maybe it was, from Winnipeg, just to fill in a spot. And it worked out for him because, yeah, Riders won the Grey Cup that year. But really, there's not very many trades that I can remember that make any significant impact on trade deadline in the CFL. So, yeah, I don't know. It'd be nice if they would recognize and make it bold that everybody knows its date and make the fans aware of it. But really, yeah, there's not much you can do with it, I don't think.
But there's also no point in making people aware of it if nothing's going to happen, really, right? And, right. You've mentioned Collaros. I mean, that's the big one that changed the trajectory of the Bombers organization for sure. It's not the most recent impactful trade made at the deadline, though, because the Bombers the year after traded for Sergio Castillo, who went on to basically should have been the Grey Cup MVP. Now, I think they traded like a 4th-round pick for his rights, but that worked out pretty well for them when they won the Cup in 2021. So it was interesting that, Kyle Walters, 2 straight deadlines, made that tinkering piece. And I thought maybe that would lead to more of a trend of moves made at the deadline in the future. But I don't know if very many were made last year. Maybe it was the Walter Fletcher over to Montreal trade, but that also could have been earlier in the season.
That was earlier.
I think that was earlier in the year, yeah. So, it's pretty quiet, and I think that comes as a result of 2 things, probably. One is, like you said, there are 9 teams in this league, and 6 teams make the playoffs, right? So you don't have buyers and sellers because you're either in the playoff spot or, with how late in the season is, potentially eliminated from the playoffs. And the other part that goes along with that is you don't really need to buy or sell because you can just overhaul your entire team in free agency, right? Like that's not lengthy contracts that you're trying to sell off for future prospects here. It's if you want to get rid of guys at the end of the year, yeah, they're gone, right? The contracts are up. So I don't know what you do to make it more exciting. I always find it interesting with leagues in general. Like even the NHL trade deadline gets so hyped up. It's the last day to make moves. Hardly any trades are made the rest of the season, and they just save them all for the very, very last minute. And it's like, we talked about this, just you and I, before the show, in terms of fantasy football, that, waiver moves and trades early in the season have a greater chance of a lasting impact because you get more weeks of that potentially. But I guess people just want to wait till the deadline and make their deals then. And that's not the case in the CFL. So I don't know how you improve it. Maybe the guaranteed contracts get it more in that direction. But CFL trade deadline day. It's come, it's gone. Hardly knew it was there. And now the rosters are locked in.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you're right. With 1-year contracts right now in the CFL, you don't get trades because players, you can just rebuild in the offseason if you really need to. Pretty much you can build an entire roster in the offseason if you have to. And you're right. The other thing is two teams really in reality, two teams are almost eliminated right now from the CFL playoffs, but they're not eliminated yet technically. And the team above two of those teams is absolutely terrible right now. So do you really give away everything? I mean, if you were Calgary Stampeders today, would you go and entertain trade offers because, Saskatchewan's a game or two above you and you got to play them yet once? I kind of doubt it. If you're Edmonton or Ottawa, maybe you might consider it. Otherwise, there's really, and the other teams, again, Winnipeg, BC, Toronto, they've got a great team already. Why would you buy and try to mix up chemistry? It's a funny thing, but that's trade deadline just really won't work that well. A couple clinching scenarios this week, just to run through here, just as I'm going to be doing this. Ottawa, Edmonton, you guys are right on the bubble, like I just said earlier. If Saskatchewan wins, you're both out of the playoffs. This right from immediately. If Hamilton wins, they still have an opportunity to host a East Division game. And if Montreal wins and Hamilton loses, Montreal has clinched second place in the East. So still some stuff to play for. The East is getting shaped up pretty quickly. Is there any chance of this being kind of crazy in the West yet, Ryan? Or we pretty much looking at what we're seeing?
I think it's done. I think the Riders are going to walk in for that third playoff spot. I think this week is probably the winner of BC. Winnipeg is probably going to go and decide who wins the West. Although, because they'd be one win ahead in the standings. Plus, they'd have the season tiebreaker, so that's going to be tough to overcome.
Too,
and I think they both have one bye week left as well. Edmonton, like we're in week 18, there's 18, 19, there's 4 weeks left to go and you're already in a must win and other teams must lose scenario. Like that's you're not gonna get that miracle run, unfortunately, for 4 weeks to end the season. Maybe, I hope it lasts 1 or 2 longer, maybe just for the excitement. And interestingly, the only team then potentially left sitting outside a playoff spot is the team that's on a bye this week, which is the Stampeders. So that could still fight their way in. I know they've got that key matchup with the Riders still, I think, coming up that could turn things in their tide or in their favor. But Calgary just looks like they're lost right now as well. And that's not to say Saskatchewan isn't, but I don't know. I think these are what we see right now as playoff teams is what we're going to get this year. And this is what makes me a little bit sad about the next couple of weeks of what are we going to talk about if Hamilton's locked in for third, Montreal's locked in for second, Toronto's locked in for first, East Division, nothing's going to change in the next 4 weeks. And West Division, like I said, could be pretty well locked in here after this week as well. So I think that it's going to be a slow crawl to the end of the season here. What do you think?
I think it's going to be terribly slow. I don't know what, again, we're going to have to bring Mike in here so he can talk about coaches getting fired because we ain't going to have much else to talk about after a while. And again, when you even look on that side, one of the teams that very well could make the playoffs is one of those teams that probably has a coach that should be fired. So it's going to be a very, very dull 4 weeks coming up. I'm sorry again in advance. Because there ain't going to be very many storylines really to talk about. I mean, yeah, next week we're going to talk if, let's say, Winnipeg wins this week and wins next week, they've clinched first, essentially. Yeah, same thing for BC. And if Saskatchewan wins 2 more games this week and next week versus Calgary, it's all over for third. So, yeah, it's going to be a very, very dull few weeks, but yeah, gives us time to work on our playoff previews, I guess.
Not only that, I mean, we can associate foods with each of the games now. There was a great suggestion here to maybe we can get some guests in here as well. Timing's a bit tricky sometimes to get the guests when we do it this late at night, but we'll see if we can swing something there. And you know what? Worst case scenario, we'll come up with storylines. And maybe I'll get to bed at a decent time on a Wednesday night finally.
Don't count on it.
No,
we'll find
never.
random things to talk about if we have to.
Oh yeah, no, there's still, and this seems doom and gloom, but there is still lots. There is going to be lots to talk about because the load management. What does that look like for all of these different teams? We can talk about guys who have stepped up and do if they have a hot hand, should they get into the lineup in the playoffs? I think there's scenarios to talk about with these games down the stretch. Just maybe not as exciting as some of the big games we've seen thus far. What else do you have here for a major storyline? Any other ones for you this week?
Well, Hamilton had some interesting news this week. I mean, the first week or day of practice this week, they had Bo Levi Mitchell out there and they had Matthew Schultz out there splitting the first team reps. What? You had Taylor Powell all year, at least keeping you within the hunt. He's had a few good hot games here. And all of a sudden you're going to decide to go and bring in Bo Levi Mitchell, who, how many interceptions has he had already so far this season? I mean, it's been 9 or it's been a lot. Let's put it that way.
Bo Levi Mitchell interceptions?
Yeah, for this season. They had to be pretty high, I would think.
It has been 9. You are correct.
9 interceptions. So you're going to bring him back right now? Don't get me wrong. Bo Levi Mitchell's a veteran. He should know what playoffs are all about, and he should be prepared for them. But, man, are you really willing to take that chance right now when you had a pretty good quarterback in there? Ryan, who would you be playing? I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I'll ask.
What the heck happened here to Taylor Powell? Like he this last week, I didn't get a chance to catch the game, unfortunately, but was there an injury of some kind? Did he just start the game slow and they decided to yank him for Schultz? Because I see Powell 2 of 6 for 14 yards. He had a rush for 12, and then Schultz took over for the rest of the game there. He's not on the injury report, so I assume it was just, slow start to the game and they wanted to make the change there. And Schultz came in and he looked decent. He looked pretty good. 11 of 19, 225, 2 touchdowns, interception. Also added 30 yards on the ground. Yeah, this was interesting news this week. I thought maybe it was just Powell getting pulled, but now Bo's healthy, supposedly. Schultz is obviously healthy. He played good this week. Powell, if you look at the depth chart on paper, I think is still the number 3 quarterback on the team. I understand this hierarchy of it, but I also see exactly what you just said, that, go with the guy that's led you here. But also, he's led you here stumbling along the way quite a bit at times, right? There were like 5 weeks in a row, I think, where he didn't have a touchdown pass, and that's not going to get you far in the playoffs here. I think Matt Schultz is the guy. I think he should get the starts. I think we talked about it a number of weeks ago who's the best backup in the CFL, and I threw my nod towards Matt Schultz because I've been really high on him throughout his career and thought he just didn't get the full opportunity to do so. And I think he should get the opportunities to start here if Powell isn't. Bo Levi Mitchell, what else can I say about him that I haven't said all year long already? Great player throughout his career, one of the best, hands down. And this is nothing against his legacy. I just don't think Bo is a reliable quarterback right now at this point in his career with all of the injuries. So, yeah, I would go with Schultz. I could see them wanting to go with the veteran presence in Bo Levi as well. But, it's interesting to see this change in the hierarchy. And if the playoff spots get locked up this week where they're stuck in third place, that gives them 3-4 weeks to figure out going in the playoffs who's going to be the guy when they head to Montreal. So, maybe it's experimentation time down the stretch here to see who gives them the best opportunity. Who would you go with?
I'd go with Taylor Powell. I mean, without a doubt. Bo Levi Mitchell's a good guy if you need him. He's backing him up. If you need him and something happens and you figure he maybe has a little bit of a hot hand coming off the bench, especially in a playoff game, because it kind of looks like that way that Hamilton's going to make the playoffs. But Taylor Powell's done you good. I mean, yes, he's had his learning curves. Yes, he's had some games that he's been a little bit tough in. But overall, I mean, he has brought you back to at least within a playoff spot. So, yeah, it's got to be Taylor Powell for me. Matthew Schultz, he's unfortunately, I think, moved to number 3 in the depth chart. He's a good quarterback, but I don't know. He's one of those guys that just seems to be the bad luck Brian of quarterbacks right now in the CFL. And then 4th, I guess, would be Kyle Loxley, if they really have to go down to that far. But I think he's more of a practice roster quarterback right now, fringing on maybe becoming a receiver. But no, right now it's Taylor Powell all the way. I'd go if I was Hamilton Tiger Cats and Orlando Steinhauer.
Let's go a couple quick hits here to end off the storylines. The Argos, what are you doing load management for them this week? Chad Kelly sat last week. Cameron Dukes looked pretty good against the Bombers, but they did struggle in time of possession, it seemed, last week. But I would say he still looked very good from what I expected of him. Brian Scott took over briefly in the 3rd or the 4th quarter before Dukes got a chance to finish the game. Who are you starting at quarterback this week, and what are you doing for load management for the Argos? Are you still rotating just a couple of guys out here and there? Are you playing everybody? What are you doing at this point?
I'd be load managing. I mean, you've earned that right. You may as well. I'd give some starters some time as well. I mean, Wynton McManus and some of the defensive line. I mean, I'd like to see some of their backups starting up in there just to see what exactly happens in there. I'd also like to see them use some of their backup receivers, especially one guy that just got signed after getting cut by the Hamilton Tiger Cats this week. That would be Richard Sindani. I would like to see him get some time, as he's a good Canadian receiver that came out of the U of R. So I'd like to see him get some time as well. Quarterback-wise, yeah, Chad Kelly sitting. I mean, I would just probably put in Cameron Dukes for the game. I don't know why they want to keep switching. I mean, you may as well build some reps in case something ever happens to Chad Kelly. Let's hope nothing does. But
that drove me nuts. Sorry to cut you off. That drove me nuts last week.
Yeah. I mean, you had the game. Cameron Dukes played a great game overall for the Argos and beating the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who had to win. I mean, that's impressive. And beating them with backups in, essentially, or some backups in. Not all of them. I mean, the receiving core, for the most part, was there. But again, you're using a backup running back. I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, AJ Ouellette didn't play last week, or did he?
He did, but he played very minimally. Like, he had 1 or 2 big runs and big catches for a touchdown. but then was out the rest of the night.
And then I think they had McMahon and I'm so sorry I can't remember the other running back's name, but yeah, they mostly had backups in. Uh, if I'm them, I'd probably be rotating some of the D line. I'd be rotating receivers again. You don't want somebody like Devontae Coxey all of a sudden getting hurt. Uh, there's no point. Why? I mean, you make sure they don't get rust. Make sure they've got a little bit of reps. Make sure they're still in game shape and ready to go. But yeah, I'd be resting guys. I mean, why not?
Yeah, that drove me nuts last week, like I said, about pulling Dukes and putting Brian Scott in. I get that you want to give them both reps in different situations there. But since you have so many weeks to the end of the season that don't matter, give Brian Scott a whole game another week, right? Like give both of them the full game material, unless, they'll probably
Give
say
them,
if
honestly,
some
give them this week, but just give them the whole game.
yeah, unless it was a case of maybe, the offense stalled a little bit there and they wanted Dukes to have a chance to watch from the sidelines for a little bit. If that was part of it, I could see an argument. The other thing is, I wonder if this plays into whether or not they play all their starters this week. It's the 150th anniversary of the Toronto Argonauts, and they're celebrating this big time at home, right? So if you're trying to hype up this celebration and bring people into the stands to celebrate it, would you not want to put the best product out on the football field to try to get them back, to keep coming back? I would. So for that reason, I wouldn't be surprised to see the starters start with having, again, all of those weeks off left to go. Maybe one or two will rotate in here and there, but I think we'll see. I think we'll see Chad Kelly play this week for Toronto at home. He's the big guy they can market around. So
I could see it too, because they're actually also honoring the 1996 Grey Cup team, which means that Doug Flutie is in the house. And if you need some comparisons for Chad Kelly to be beside Doug Flutie, that's probably a pretty good option for them right at that moment. So that'll be kind of cool. The other one that I wanted to bring up with you for a quick hit, Chad Owens has re-signed with the Argonauts for one day. He's going to retire as a Toronto Argonaut. What's your best memory of Chad Owens as an Argo or as in the CFL?
he was fun to watch. This is a guy that, when we talked before about how I don't have any memories of George Reed on the football field, like Chad Owens is a guy who was in his prime when I started becoming a big football fan. And he was just electric and fun to watch. And, his ability to return kicks, his ability as a wide receiver, Owens, the flying Hawaiian, right? Yeah. Like he was one of those electric players that could make something happen every single time he was out there on the football field. And correct me if I'm wrong, he did go to Hamilton. He was big with the Argos and then went over to Hamilton for a little while, and then that got weird. Was it the reverse of Brandon Banks? I feel like it was with Chad Owens, but no, definitely one of those guys that when we talk about all of the electric kick returners we have in the CFL, yeah, Chad Owens was definitely one of those.
Yeah, definitely. He started off his career with the Jacksonville Jaguars, then went to the Miami Dolphins, played with the Bucks, then went back to the Jaguars, then ended up with the AFL team, Arena Football League team, the Colorado Crush, and then was signed originally by the Montreal Alouettes in 2009. Won a Grey Cup with the Alouettes. We won't talk about how. He was on practice roster, I think, for the most. No, it's that he actually was playing in those games, so he was on the active roster a bit. So then went to the Toronto Argonauts for 5 years, and again got his nickname for such great returns and just big plays all the time is what I always found with Chad Owens. 2016 ended up with the Tiger Cats, played a season with them, then ran over in 2017 to the Saskatchewan Roughriders for one season.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and then ended up his career with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. He only ended up on the practice roster in 2018 and then decided, that was the career, I guess, of Chad Owens. 2023 is when he's officially retiring as an Argonaut. He did win the Outstanding Player Award in 2012, which is cool. And I think the Argos won the Grey Cup that year, if I'm not mistaken, as well, because that was the year before. Or was that BC that won that year? Can't remember in 2012. 2011
BC won in 2011.
BC won in 2011. Okay, so then it was
Yeah, the
Toronto in
Bombers lost
2012.
that one too.
Yeah, okay. Because BC had Ricky Foley on his team in 2011 on BC, and then he was 2012 in Toronto and 2013 in Saskatchewan, and all three were home teams for their own Grey Cups. So, but yeah, it was really cool for Chad Owens to retire as an Argonaut, where he rightfully should. I mean, he had the
Yeah.
best of his career over there, and best wishes to him in whatever he's doing next.
It's always funny
Ryan?
too when a guy announces his retirement now when his last season was 2018 on the practice roster. When I saw this news today, I was like, wait, Chad Owens wasn't already retired? Like, what has he been doing for the past 4 years?
Exactly. I was looking in there. I thought maybe I might see him like USFL or like some weird odd league somewhere, and maybe NFL Europe or somewhere else. But no, he just never played after the Ticats.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Speaking of retirement and pending retirement, Andrew Harris didn't play against the Bombers this past week, but was on the sideline, got a pretty good video tribute talking about all the stats and everything with the Bombers and a standing ovation there. So it sucks we never got to see him, come back and actually play here in Winnipeg, but because, this is his final season, he's on the injured list, but that was cool to see Andrew Harris get that recognition. And I know he's going to be going off to do some coaching in BC, but I hope similar to this, that one day he gets a one-day contract with the Bombers and can officially retires with Winnipeg. Would be the rightful end to that storyline, I feel like, there as well.
Or BC, because he was dominating there already before he came to Winnipeg.
That too, right? But Winnipeg's the hometown team.
I
Also,
I'm just trying to stir it up with Winnipeg fans.
Yeah, also left on not great terms, but you can tell the fans still loving him and appreciate all he did for the franchise there. Should we get into our betting picks for this week's games, or do you have another storyline you want to talk about yet?
I think I'm good on storylines, to be honest with you. Again, it's going to be one of those games. This is going to determine a lot this week. So make sure you grab an extra wing or an extra drumstick from the turkey and catch some football this weekend, because it's going to be pretty fun to watch.
Yes, absolutely. All right, we're going to do betting picks for each of the 4 games, and then we'll do fantasy players to watch after that. We haven't been keeping up with our records so far on these picks so far this year. But Adam, I'm starting to wonder if I'm catching you here, because I had the perfect 8-0 week last week. Although on the podcast, I think I did take BC, but I did end up switching my pick over to Saskatchewan afterwards. It's just a gut feeling on the day of when I put in my picks that, I thought the Riders were going to keep it close enough to cover. 8-0 last week, and I think I went 7-1 the week before. The Ticats were dead to me. I picked them again. They redeemed themselves. They are now back into consideration going forward. Do you know how you did last week? Any idea?
I didn't have my picks into Trey last week.
Right.
However, I did have. I was only 2 for 4. I got the Winnipeg game wrong because I had the Argonauts, and I had which was the other one that I had wrong. I had the Ottawa wrong because I thought Ottawa was actually going to win that one. So, and how wrong I was. But I did have the Ticats right, and I did have the Rough Riders because I thought, well, you never know, they might pull an upset. But I didn't say they were going to win it, but I thought, you know what, at least they're going to make it within reason. And for some reason, they seem to be really good at winning in fourth quarters. So,
oh yeah, no, that was great. As somebody who put a $1 parlay down on getting everything right this week, to have that was the closest. Like Winnipeg, Toronto barely came back to cover the spread. Then Saskatchewan needed that crazy late fourth quarter almost comeback to cover the spread. And I forget what the other games were. I think one of them covered the over-under by 0.5 point. And then Hamilton just got the job done in the fourth game there. So, it's tough to bet the CFL because it's very unpredictable. And it's especially tough to bet on games when there's no odds to bet on. We do not have picks here to make for Edmonton at Toronto because Trey, our trusty resident betting expert, looked at like 5 different betting sites, including FanDuel, I assume, which is the CFL has the official odds on the CFL site. They don't have odds for this game. And I'm going to guess it's largely due to nobody really knows yet what the Argos are going to do with their roster, right? Like Chad Kelly playing versus Brian Scott getting the start is a vastly different line, I would say, there. And so they're probably not going to open it up until they have the depth chart available. So that is why we're not going to make picks necessarily on this game. I mean, if you want to, do you have a pick? Who do you think is going to win it? I'm still going to probably take the Argos to win at home, even if they rest their starters after how well they played against Winnipeg last week. You?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Argonauts. I mean, they're a strong team. They're going to give Edmonton all they want. Unfortunately, Edmonton fans, that's going to be the elimination game on you. But you know what? It's honestly probably about time that they just need to go down. It sucks, but yeah, no, I'm going to say the Argonauts are going to win this game. Talk to me, though, if it's by 15 or 16 or something, then maybe I'll switch my pick. But like I said, that's pretty much what I'm going with on that one.
All right, let's get into the ones we actually have lines for here. The juiciest one, Winnipeg at BC. The Lions are 1-point favorites at home, which might mean I think they're actually favoring Winnipeg because they spot the home team a couple of points here. The over-under is 51.5. This is about as much of a pick'em game as you could ever get when it comes to betting. What are you taking here?
I'm going to take the BC Lions in this one here. I like the Lions, how they've been playing lately. They gave up the last minute of garbage time versus the Rough Riders. Honestly, they dominated the game. They've been playing very well. They're getting healthier. Keon Hatcher looks like a beast out there. Vernon Adams is just making greater and greater throws and more accurate every time. Plus, he can run around with the ball, which I think this year actually we've almost forgotten about because he's been so good on his throws. Winnipeg, again, I just look at them and I say they were very fortunate that for some reason that Ryan Dinwiddie decided to go and reward his old team by giving him a win by pulling Cameron Dukes last week. Otherwise, I think Toronto was going to win that game. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the BC Lions. And it's at home for the Lions. So you can't tell me that the owner of the BC Lions are not going to have that team just hyped right up. It's going to be a fun game in the Dome in BC Place. Give me the Lions.
And what about the over-under?
Yeah, and the over-under, I'm going to go with the over on this one because I think both of these teams could just maybe have a shootout. It seems like whenever they get together, sometimes there are lots of points, sometimes there isn't, but it's in BC. I think both teams are really wanting to go. They know this is for all the marbles. Yeah, give me the over.
Yeah, BC opening the upper deck for this game, I believe, as well. That's how well ticket sales are going. BC, Trey's not here tonight to tell me that home field advantage doesn't matter. So I'm going to say in this game it absolutely matters because both these teams have hammered each other in their own barns, right? And so BC is a better team at home than they are on the road, and the Bombers have not been a very good road team this year at all. I've listed off the stats in previous weeks, but they're blowing teams out of the water at home, and on the road it's either they need a late comeback to do it, or it's a trap game that they end up losing in those, or they get the win, but it's a very low scoring and narrow victory. So I like BC in this one pretty easily for me. I think they're going to take it. And the over-under, I'm going with you. I think there's going to be a lot of points on the board between these two teams this week. Then we get into our second game here, which is the Hamilton Tiger Cats visiting the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The Riders at home are 3.5-point favorites over the Ticats. The over-under line is at 49.5. Tough to pick this without knowing who Hamilton's starting quarterback is going to be. That might change this for me. So I may change this pick closer to when we get to having depth charts out and stuff. I think I'm going to take the Ticats right now, though. I don't know. I'm feeling better about what they've done as a team lately than I'm feeling about what the Riders have done. And Matt Schultz, I thought, looked good last week coming back in. I'm hoping he gets the start. And James Butler and his ability to run against the Riders' defensive line that's been struggling to do so. I like that. I also like the points. I think Dolagala is going to throw a couple touchdown passes. I think the Ticats can put some points on the board in this one as well. So I'll take over on the 49.5. And I think it's going to be a close game, right? So I'm taking the Ticats to win it, but I could see it being close enough where the Riders could win. But if they win, I don't know if it's by 3.5. We'll take the extra kind of padding there of the 3.5 points to take Hamilton to cover at least. Adam, what about you?
On this one here, I'm going to finally, well, it's a weird game. I believe you're exactly right. I mean, James Butler can run all over the Rough Riders. I think that defensive line is not very good in Saskatchewan. The Riders have shown up and learned how to be the 3-minute warning team that everybody fears. Is essentially what they've been lately. They can't seem to play earlier in the game. That being said, though, this game here I think means a lot more for the Rough Riders now, and especially from everything that's transpired. I think that win for George is probably going to kick in. The crowd is going to be a big crowd on Saturday night. It's honoring the 2013 team, which was an extremely popular team in Saskatchewan. When Doubles is back in the crowd, and along with pretty much every single Rough Rider, I haven't heard about Corey Sheets. Is the only one I haven't heard about.
I think I saw on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it today that he is in town and looking for a car to get around. So if you're in Saskatchewan, maybe hook him up.
It's just like the 2013 team. They used to ask for bikes in Saskatoon when they were training camp all the time. So, yeah, he's back, I guess, in town. And we all remember what happened when the 2013 team played Hamilton in the Grey Cup that year. It was a domination by the Rough Riders. I think the Riders are going to win this one. I think they're going to win actually pretty big, just because they got all that motivation and all that extra thing on the sidelines of what's happening. The pressure's on them, though. I mean, they've got to perform, and they got to start winning. It's time to start getting serious if you're going to make a playoff run. And, yeah, this is the time for the Rough Riders to start showing it. Give me the under on this game, though, because I don't think there'll be a lot of points scored. Not like the 2013 Grey Cup, but I think that there will be enough that Saskatchewan's going to win this one by more than 3.5.
Oh, you're very convincing, and you're tempting me to switch my pick. I'm gonna stick with the Ticats for now, but check the Discord betting channel. If I switch my pick once the depth charts come out, I'll let you know there.
The only thing they needed to do is they should have invited Henry Burris to that 2013 Grey Cup celebration. I mean, he was the biggest reason why the Riders probably won it in the end, just because the fans just absolutely got all over him.
Richard in the chat wants to know, can we look back and see how many games Adam has picked Sask to win this year? The answer is probably all of them. So, no, it's pretty close. It's pretty close.
The first game of the season, I know I picked Edmonton because I was like, okay, this is going to be ugly this year. I think I maybe picked Winnipeg the first game that they played in Saskatchewan. And there's a couple others that I know I picked Saskatchewan to lose. So, but I did probably pick them to cover. So
you've at least picked them to cover, I feel like, almost every week. So you know what? For other games, trust Adam's insight. For Rider games, maybe not as much, given their record on the season, but not bad overall. And he probably did get some of those right. So kudos to you on those. It's just like me, I think last year, I don't think I got a single Argos game right all year and eventually just started flipping a coin. So we're not there yet. We were earlier this season, but now I'm on a hot streak. So we'll see if I can keep that streak going. When the Ottawa Red Blacks have a rematch here with Montreal Alouettes on Thanksgiving Monday. Rematch from last week's game. Those are always tough to pick. The line is Montreal at home -6.5 with the over-under of 48. So I'll go over to you here first on this one. What are you thinking?
Well, Richard in the chat, yes. If I cut myself on a piece of glass or something, definitely green comes out a little bit. Very little red comes out for some reason. I don't know why. And also when I bruise black and green, not black and blue. It's just the way it works in Saskatchewan. It's those weird things like that. But in this game here, I'm going to take the Alouettes. I just, you know what? Ottawa's put their best effort in, and I think they will again to try to keep this going. And they seem to play well for Bob Dice, the team overall. They've done a lot better in the last little bit. I think they found themselves even a running back in Devontae Williams. I think he's going to be the running back of the future for the Ottawa Redblacks. Dustin Crum looks pretty good. I think this team is starting to build a little bit towards the future, but the Montreal Alouettes right now are still contenders for an East Championship, or at least a trip out to Toronto to go and face the Argonauts. I think the Montreal Alouettes need momentum going into a few more tougher games this next little bit, and I think the Alouettes will win this one by 6.5. Though, yeah, that's only a touchdown, so I think they will. And give me the under in this game as well. I know Montreal won pretty handedly last time, but I don't see them scoring as many as they did last time. So I'm going to go with the under and go with the Alouettes.
Yeah, I'm also doing the same. Montreal again continues to show that they can shut teams not named BC, Winnipeg, and Toronto completely down. They've been doing that pretty well all season long, and Ottawa is just struggling to put touchdowns on the board at times. So I'm going to take the under on this as well and the Alouettes. So I believe we're agreeing on this particular game. Write that down there. Perfect. All right, let's move on to our fantasy players to watch for this week in the CFL. Now, again, this is another thing where we're at this point in the season. I mean, you've heard me mention names every single week and throw out stats, and a lot of these stats aren't changing from week to week. So we're going to go position by position. I'll also fully admit I've been on vacation the past couple of days and haven't exactly invested as much time as normal into filling out stats on these. So a lot of these, I do have some stats for some of them, but a lot of these players are also, I'm just going to give you my off the top first thoughts on these players as we run through them. So we'll start off with the quarterback position because that's one of the most crucial to pick here in fantasy. And I'll just give you a quick run through of what I'm thinking here among these quarterbacks. You know, you've got VA, you've got Zach Collaros, they're the two most expensive ones. It could be a high-scoring matchup. I think maybe people would be deciding between them as probably two of the top options. I like Vernon Adams more at $14,000. He does have 3 or more touchdown passes in his last 7 games. He's averaged 25 fantasy points in his last 3. And really, the rushing ability puts him over the top for me over Collaros. I think both of them could throw 3+ touchdowns. I think both of them will probably throw a pick or 2 in this game, but I think VA has a greater chance of a rushing touchdown and rushing ability. Fajardo's got a great matchup against Ottawa, but really didn't do much with it last week, so I'm not banking on him to put up a big total this week. Chad Kelly, any of the Argos quarterbacks, you don't know what load management's going to look like and if they're going to play the full game. I don't think we can rely on any of them. Similarly, Hamilton's quarterbacks, I'm a bit iffy to go that direction. Matt Schultz, Bo Levi Mitchell, who's the starter and how long is the leash if they struggle early in this game and the backup comes in. I'm not loving that situation a ton there. Fantasy-wise, Dustin Crum against Montreal, tempting based on his rushing ability, but also didn't put up a great passing total, and I think just 9 fantasy points against the same team last week. Montreal shuts other teams down in the passing game pretty well. The other 2 options other than VA I kind of like and I'm considering this week. One is Trey Ford at $10,000. He is averaging the most points per game in the CFL with 21.6 on the season. No games under 15 points yet this year, which is really the target value you're looking for at his price. Also, Edmonton needs to keep their slim playoff chances alive, and they are the first game of the week. So, if it's a dire situation, I think Ford's just going to take the ball and try to run with it to pick up the first down if he needs to keep them in the game, right? And it seems to be he seems to be that kind of mentality of a quarterback that will take the game upon himself there. And the other one, this one's for you, Adam. Jake Dolegala at $10,000 is tempting because he's averaged more pass attempts than anyone else in his last 3 games. The Ticats also allow 17.9 fantasy points per game to starting quarterbacks. That's a pretty good total there. And I think he normally has a potential for a couple of touchdown passes. But he's also thrown a couple more interceptions, so that puts him a little lower on my rankings here for this week as well. That's how I see the quarterback landscape for Week 18. What about you? Any big names, big differences there?
No, pretty well what exactly you said. I wanted to take Jake Dolegala for this week once again. I will in our private fantasy league because, yeah, why not? Because I don't want to take Jake Mayer because I think he's off this week. That would make no sense. So I'm going to take him there, but I'm going to actually take Trey Ford on my CFL fantasy for the same reasons you said. It's a must-win game. It's a big game, and if he doesn't, they're out. I think that this kid might just could step up in a big game. So yeah, I'll take Trey Ford. He might get me some pretty decent points. And if nothing else, rushing yards are pretty good also for quarterbacks. So,
all right, let's talk running backs here. And, a couple of names. Again, the best matchup is always whoever's playing the Edmonton Elks. Unfortunately, it's the Argos this week. And how much is Ouellette going to play? How much is McMahon could be a cheap value play there for you, but are you going to invest $11,000 in Ouellette when last week he was the starter but played only a couple of snaps? That's risky to me, so I don't like that play there. Calgary's running backs thankfully are on a bye, so we don't have to worry about that situation. I believe Jamal Morrow's going to be back for Saskatchewan this week. Looks like he's been practicing fully. He does come in at $9,000. I think that could be an intriguing play potentially against the Hamilton Tiger Cats there. I'm just trying to find his recent numbers here for you. Jamal Morrow, does have 10 plus fantasy points in 5 of his last 6 games. So there's consistency there, but he's probably not going to put up a massive total for you. Other options I look at around the board, Taquan Mazzell, that one's out for me. He's been shut down in both games by the Bombers. They normally shut other teams' running backs down. William Stanback, that one's a maybe for me. The last 2 weeks he's looked good and he's getting more rushes, but his totals are still kind of touchdown dependent there. I guess everybody's kind of are. So I'm not high. Let me just go to the 3 names that I think are the leading candidates here for me at running back. And that would be the first one has to be the guy that Adam just said is the future at running back for the Ottawa Redblacks, and that's Devontae Williams at 9,000. 19 or more fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. He only had 7 carries last week, but 9 targets against this same Montreal team. And the Alouettes give up 14.9 starting running backs, second worst in the league. So I think Devontae Williams is a home run play. And I have to include him in the list because he saved my fantasy season in one of our leagues this week. Thank you, Devontae Williams, for that. Brady Oliveira, also $13,400, 23 plus fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games, 5 games over 100 yards rushing in his last 9. He's got, some of the most elite totals you're going to get out of a running back week after week. The interesting thing, though, that those 100-yard rushing games in 5 of his last 9 I don't think maybe one of them was on the road. Most of them come at home. He does struggle a little bit more on the road, which is where he is this week. So I'm not as high on it at the price, I will admit there. But I think he's still got a good chance at a big total. And James Butler has been disappointing in his last 5 games, averaging just 10 fantasy points there. But he's averaging 15.5 carries per game in his last 7, and the Riders have struggled to stop the run, although they did a decent job against Mazzell last week. Only other name I don't think I've talked about here is Kevin Brown against the Argos, and yeah, I think that one, I think I would throw him into consideration as well. He's explosive. He puts up a lot of yards. I think some of his touchdowns could get stolen, but if you're in a situation where Toronto's playing backup quarterbacks and maybe not moving the ball down the field as much, maybe there's more time for Edmonton's offense to be out there and Kevin Brown there. So yeah, I think for me it's a toss up between Williams, Oliveira, Butler, and Brown probably this week, with maybe some value plays depending on the depth charts that come out. What do you think, Adam?
Well, McMahon in Toronto was interesting me for a while, but I got so much fantasy dollars to use. I can spend it in pretty well anywhere else and make a little bit more sense, in my opinion. Just because, again, it could get split between McMahon, it could Ouellette, and I know there's a third guy there as well in Toronto that they seem to be pretty high on as well. So you could really split up your reps there, and that could mess with you quite a bit. It's kind of the reason why nobody really wants to really play Kadeem Carey or Dedrick Mills as much as they used to, because there's 2 guys in Calgary. So that's why I don't really like any of the Toronto options. Who I've got right now is James Butler. Reason being is Saskatchewan's D-line has been pretty poor lately, and James Butler still gets a lot of opportunity to carry the football. So that's one of my options for sure. The other one is Brady Oliveira. If Winnipeg's going to win that game on Friday night, it's going to be on the hands of number 20. It's simple as that. If he gets a good game running, he's going to have the Winnipeg's going to have a good game. So I think Brady Oliveira is going to have a good game. And the other one that I've got here is Devontae Williams. He's been pretty solid lately, and I really have been liking his play. He keeps running up and downhill pretty easily and seems to find those holes very easily in a Montreal defense in which they really got to stop letting that happen. So those are my 3 picks. I was debating putting Jamal Morrow on my list, but I don't know. Saskatchewan again could be one of those teams that, again, now that Philip Blake is back, they do have the option of playing Frankie Hickson and actually playing him. So they could start splitting reps up in Saskatchewan there as well, especially if Jamal Morrow isn't quite 100% yet. So that's why I kind of kept Jamal Morrow off my list. See what they do this week, and then next week against Calgary, who traditionally Jamal Morrow really carves up. We'll see how they do this week, and then see what goes for next week. So,
yeah, and Deontay McMahon, I would strongly actually consider for a value play at 2,500, depending what the depth chart looks like. Even if he's listed as the backup, I'd almost be tempted to take that and then stack my money elsewhere at receiver. I don't put together a full lineup before doing these shows. Like, I go through the options and talk about them, but then kind of start building my lineup afterwards. So I don't know how many dollars I'm going to have left over, but if it lets me stack a good lineup elsewhere, because a lot of these running backs I talked about, I see flaws in them, where Devontae Williams is probably the only one I'm a sure lock into my lineup. Yeah, I would consider taking a value play on McMahon at 2,500 and hoping he gets a couple of reps at a minimum in this game. Let's talk wide receivers now and go through the list. Now, this is one where I don't have any stats fully documented here. Well, I do have my stats sheets up to scroll through for you here as well. I'll go team by team, quickly give you the overview there. I mean, BC last week, Dominic Rhymes came back in, did get 9 targets for them there. And the question was, is that going to eat in? Whose targets is that going to take away? It didn't take away Keon Hatcher's. He had 13 targets 10 catches, 172 yards, and a touchdown. Hollins put up 24 points of his own, but only off 4 targets and 2 touchdowns. I think I still keep trotting. I want to keep putting Keon Hatcher out there potentially as a lineup option. I think he's a great discount that you can get at $12,400 for just the talent that he brings to the lineup. And I know he got a bunch of targets last time out against Winnipeg as well. So I really like Keon Hatcher still as a potential option. Let's see, Calgary's on the bye. Edmonton, it's tempting. They play Toronto. Toronto struggles against the pass, so there is room there. But Trey Ford doesn't attempt very many passes in a game. So most of these guys, you're getting, 3 targets, 4 targets a game. And that to me is numbers that scare me, because if they don't include a big play or a touchdown, it's an underwhelming week. The one I would maybe consider in that is Kyron Moore at right wideout. 7 targets and 9 targets in his last 2 games. He gets those dump off passes, and he's playing Toronto. They give up 12.7 to the position there. So if anybody on the Elks, it's Kyron Moore, but probably staying away from their receivers this week. I'll go through Hamilton here next, and then I'll take a break and have you weigh in on some options here for you, Adam. Hamilton, it's a toss-up every week. Are you going to go Terry Godwin, or are you going to go Tim White? Normally, I want one of those guys in my lineup, and I think it is Tim White this week at $12,000. He last week put up 18.6 once again. He had 96 and a touchdown. And also, if Schultz is starting or if Bo Levi Mitchell is starting, I feel like early in the season, they both favored Tim White on big, deep passes for big yardage there. And that is what I like to see. I think he's got the big play potential to, if you put him in your lineup, he could be a week winner for you to have Tim White in there. So he would probably be the Ticats receiver of recommendation here for me. I've talked for a while in a row here. Adam, what do you think at wide receiver for some of these or any of the teams around the league?
Well, I'll try to talk a few of the teams that you haven't yet. Toronto's side, I'm looking at I'm still looking at Devontae Coxey. Yes, he gets a few balls thrown at him. I don't know if I would really take him right now, but again, who do you take in Toronto? Somebody will get the football a little bit there. Devontae Coxey had a reasonable week last week. Same thing also. Brissett was in there. There's a few other pieces in Toronto that maybe you might want to take a look at. Neal is another one as well. Still only 3,500. He's been playing a few, getting his reps in there as well. So there's pieces in Toronto to work with. But again, you got to remember, you're also dealing with backup quarterbacks, and that's always a little bit of a risky situation, right? So keep that in mind with Toronto. Montreal, what I'm looking at there actually is, I think it is Tyler Speaker, if I'm not mistaken. I really like his.
Cole Speaker.
Sorry, Cole Speaker.
Or are you talking about Tyler Sneed?
No, Cole Speaker. I'm talking about the right one. Because Montreal actually had his name bar spelt wrong for half the season and finally fixed it here. The other day, I finally see that they fixed that. Either that or Fantasy had it right the whole time or had it wrong the whole time.
Fantasy didn't even have him as an available option to pick for like 5 straight weeks. So,
well, fair enough. So, because I know that Montreal had it down as speaker as in like what a car speaker is, and apparently that's not the right spelling. So, whoops.
Great.
Anyways, I really liked his play in the last few games. Has really made it kind of been a deeper target for Cody Fajardo. So I do like him in there. Used to always say Austin Mack, but actually Montreal's gotten some other pieces around Fajardo, which is great. One of those also is Tyson Philpott. I mean, every week it seems like he gets at least a touchdown. He gets some good yardage. He'd be a good pickup as well, and fairly reasonable. I think he's 6,500 for that as well. So I wouldn't mind him as well if you were looking at that one. And on the last game for Saskatchewan, I mean, I would probably play Mitchell Picton. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to say Mitchell Picton anymore. There's 3 guys in Saskatchewan, right? Everybody knows this right now. It's either Tevin Jones, it's either Samuel Emelis, or you can probably even take a chance with Keon Schaefer-Baker. I don't know how much of a chance I take on that one there, just because I don't know. He can't. I don't know. It just can't seem to get anything going early in the season. And early in the season, he didn't get a training camp in. It just seems like it was maybe a lost season for Keon Schaefer-Baker. The other one would be Sean Bain Jr. He does get some reps in Saskatchewan, does get some targets, but nowhere near as what probably Tevin Jones and Emelis get. Those are your big playmakers. So those are ones I'd look at if I was looking at any Rough Riders. The guys I do have, though, is Keon Hatcher, and I do have sorry, just telling me that I closed off. I did take Cole Speaker as well for the Alouettes. So.
Yeah, just to touch on a couple of things there. Yeah, Tommy Neild for the discount play is probably the only Argos receiver I'm taking right now, just with the unknowns there. Dejon Brissett's looked good in the last 2 weeks, but it's been hard all season to figure out who's going to be leading the way for Toronto. You touched on Montreal. If Austin Mack is going to be healthy and ready to go, there's no injury report yet because the game's Monday. But he sat out last week and they struggled in the passing game against an Ottawa team they should have put up over 300 yards against. So, how much of an impact does Mack make there in his last 3 games? In his last 3 games where he didn't get ejected? 8 targets, 10 targets, and 13 targets in that span. So, he's Fajardo's go-to guy, but I also like the value play of Tyson Philpott because in the last 3 weeks, he's put up 25.5, 12.7, and 13.1 fantasy points, 2 touchdowns, and a couple of big plays as well in the past couple of weeks there. Seems like he's got that potential to easily oversell his value. What other teams do you talk about? You talk about the Riders here. I wholeheartedly disagree with you on Keon Schaefer-Baker, actually, because in his last 2 games, he's had 8 targets, 7 catches for 76 and a touchdown, and 12 targets, 9 catches for 104. So he's had 20 targets in his last 2 games. And 31 in his last 4. So I think he's one of Dolagala's go-to guys. Again, it's hard to pick him versus all the other ones that you mentioned in the lineup. But if Dolagala's throwing 38 passes a game, yeah, some of them are still going to go his way. And he's $6,000 and half the price of Bain and Jones, etc. So I still really like Schaefer-Baker as a cheaper value play here.
My only real reason for not picking him is touchdowns. I don't think he's had any, has he?
He got one not this past week, the week before.
Okay. Maybe I'm a little hard.
And did get a couple of looks near the end zone in the Banjo Bowl, but they weren't able to connect on those.
The Riders weren't doing nothing in the Banjo Bowl.
Yeah, no, I don't even know if they showed up. So
they went to Calgary instead of Winnipeg.
Whoops, wrong way. Any other Ottawa wide receivers here? We haven't talked about Ottawa. I don't think we've talked about Winnipeg yet. Ottawa, I really like the value play here as well for $4,100. I think it is of Braylon Addison this week because he's gotten going a little bit in the last 2 games as well. 15 and 16.4 fantasy points in his last 2 games. 9 targets, 94 yards on 7 catches for him last game. That is the numbers we like to see from a guy like Braylon Addison here. And we'll see if he continues to get more involved in the rematch there. And on the Winnipeg side, Winnipeg. I never get the wide receiver right, it seems like, for them there. And I think it's probably got to be Dalton Schoen. He's expensive. But $13,500, but he's got 3 straight games over 100 yards. He's got 3 games this year of multiple touchdowns, and he's got 19 targets in his last 2 games. So I think he's getting the lion's share, no pun intended, given their opponent, of targets. And I'm pretty sure he torched the Lions last time out when they faced each other there for 30 points in that game. So I'm done picking Kenny Lawler. I took him last week. He'll get his 7-8 targets a game, but catch 2 of them, because all Collaros does is throw the ball up in hopes that Lawler brings it down, and a lot of times it's just not able to bring it down because of tight coverage. So I think Schoen, if those targets hit, the targets are more likely to hit, and he's more likely to bring you big points with those. Don't know if I've had him in a lineup this year, but considering it this week, I think that's all we've got for wide receivers, unless you have any other ones you wanted to mention out there. But I think you covered kind of what direction you were looking at. Let's talk everybody's favorite topic. It's the defenses for fantasy football. What direction are you leaning for a defense this week?
Well, I mean, I've done it now for the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and namely because I'm being cheap. And also this week, I think actually it might be a legitimate play. I'm going to take Saskatchewan's defense. They aren't really known as a big team for offensive plays other than Tim White, Hamilton. And if it's Bo Levi Mitchell back there, that Rider defense could potentially feast. So it's a cheap play. It's a decent play for what I'm thinking this week. And again, I never spend money on defense because, again, I think defenses are for championships unless you're playing fantasy football. They should be the new sayings, right? So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Riders defense.
Looking at last week for defenses, there was one team that scored big. The next highest was 7 points, but the Montreal Alouettes put up 14 points on the Red Blacks off of 5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, and only giving up 15 points allowed. Again, they shut opposing teams down. I think the Alouettes are a defense, probably my leading candidate at $8,200 to pick this week. I like that matchup there, but if you need a value play, go the Riders defense at 5,100 because that saves you a ton of money, and defenses normally don't deliver a ton there. All right, speaking of fantasy football, before we wrap things up, let's talk a little bit about our fantasy league results and matchups and all that fun stuff. I'm just trying to find, there it is. I think that's what I needed. That's not what I opened at all. There we go. On my other screen here to find the results for our CFC Draft League. Adam, you had the top score, 120.9 points. How are you feeling about this week's performance?
Well, I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, Tyson Philpo gave me some good points to start it up, and it just went and kept going from there. But I mean, again, when you got Rennie Paredes as your kicker, you can do amazing things. So just keep having to go and give that a little bit of a knife twist to Trey. Other than that, yeah, it's been a good week so far for me. Jake Dolagala did have some good points at the end of the week for me. And, of course, Devontae Williams had some good points as a running back as well for me. So, really, overall, just a really good week. Hey, I still have an opportunity to catch Trey, and that's my goal right now, and I'm sticking to it.
You have made up a ton of ground on him in the last couple of weeks. Also, your highest scoring player of the week, the Alouettes defense, because we count defensive touchdowns. So you got 26 points out of your defense this week, 45 points out of the defense and special teams.
If they would count that in CFL fantasy, I'd actually pick a defense.
Well, you have to. They force you to. Mike had the second highest score at 103.9. Keon Hatcher and Brady Oliveira, huge weeks for him there. I had 93.9. Vernon Adams throwing 450 yards helped with that. 31.6 points there from him. Rough week for Team Trey. 55.2 points for him this week. In our podcast network league, we're playing against other podcast hosts for charity. The winner is going to get a donation to charity of their choice. We had the quarterfinals this week. Unfortunately, you and Trey did not make to the playoffs, but I did manage to lock down the first overall in the standings, and I'm lucky with the matchup I got because I had the second lowest score of the week at I think like 81 points or something like that, 81.9, but I managed to win by 7. So literally any other matchup, I would have been lost and been out of the playoffs. But I do advance off to the semifinals this week, and I'll be playing Safamod from the Piffles podcast. So make sure you check out their great show as well. Steph from the Go Stamps Go Show and the fellows from the X's and Argos podcast, the other semifinal matchup there. Make sure you check out all those other great podcasts. Also,
so this means you don't have to try to lose to Superfan Mike this year.
Thankfully not. No, he got eliminated in the playoffs now already too.
Crazy times we're living in, man.
I feel.
And meanwhile, I get 134 points, and I'm never anywhere near the playoffs now.
I feel like my first round matchup luck is a bit of karma for how I went out of the playoffs last year with the terrible luck in that sense. Over in our Discord league, playing against other members of our Discord community, same thing, into the playoffs. Neither you or I made it. Trey didn't make it either. Mike was the lone representative of the podcast, and he came so close, but unfortunately did lose by 3 points this week. Discord user Sandwiches. In the other matchup, Cheppy beating Brandon by a couple of points there as well. So semifinal matchup, FM Fan 2014 facing off against 5th place Cheppy, and Josh M facing off against Sandwiches. We've got no skin in the game here, Adam. We're out. We just get to enjoy some fun trash talk in the Discord channels over the next couple of days and weeks here. Should be fun.
I'm just amazed that they actually, they not only that, they're taking this seriously. I mean, there's betting odds on who's going to win this matchup this week.
Yeah, it's great. The CFC Sportsbook. Kudos to the Discord community as well that none of the 4 of us made it to the semifinals in our league there, because we've got some very good fantasy players playing alongside of us where, maybe the winner needs to come host an episode of this show in our place.
I mean, we could use a bye week if anybody wants to take over. I mean, my spot's always here.
And they can run the whole show for the week. I'll take another vacation. Maybe that's not a well-advised idea. I don't know. And what could go wrong, right? I could be replaced permanently.
For sure. I mean, I could use the break.
Long season, but fun season. It is week 18 in the CFL and CFL Fantasy, which means, Adam, you actually do have stuff to play for this week because you've made it to the Champions League in the official CFL Fantasy site. I did not qualify, and I'm a little bitter about that. No weeks at the very top. Just strong performances, but not at the top.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I've never seen how this works yet, so it'll be very interesting to see how I do, and that's what's making me go and get some better scores here to practice up a little bit. So hopefully I can repeat like last week and get a reasonably good score and go from there, depending exactly who I pick here. Right now, I hope I got a pretty good fantasy lineup, but I might be tweaking a little bit more just in case, I can win those tickets to the Grey Cup.
Hey, that would be pretty sweet. And I will live vicariously through you in this Champions League. Best of luck to you and any of our listeners who made that. All right, let's get into wrapping up the show here today. And I will put that up on the screen. So we will be back again next week, same time, same place, week 19 preview. We'll do all the same fun things. Also, let us know what you thought of this format where we kind of bounced around in different games with the storylines and stuff. Also, try to have the fantasy stats a little more prepared and not try to scroll through them on the fly as we go through that segment. Follow us on social media. We're on Twitter at CF Countdown Pod, on Facebook, facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod there as well. You can find me on Twitter at CooperTrooper42. Mike is at Mike Garrell. Trey is at Trey Harnesslink. Adam, What do you all have going on these days?
Well, it's going to be a lot of senior hockey starting pretty soon. That's about a month away, but we've got some practices going to be going on pretty soon. We've got a bunch of other little things going on around there. So if you want to go and follow me along at Adam Stewart 1, you'll probably find a little bit more about senior hockey right there. And of course, I'm probably going to take a little bit of a razzing from Trey for going and bugging him in a 2 seconds, but you can find Trey probably crying in the corner right now on X because his Blue Jays are out. If you take a look at Trey Harnesslink, you can find him over there, probably willowing in blue tears.
Rip all the Blue Jays' hopes and dreams. There was a lot of hype.
There's a lot of hype, man. A lot of hype.
Always is. But, on the bright side, for all the Toronto fans, your team's probably going to win the Grey Cup this year. So at least you get one championship.
Well, you know you're not going to win that little silver trophy that's looks like a Stanley Cup. And we know that you won't win the baseball one, but hey, hope's eternal. You guys are like Rider fans. Keep sticking with your teams. They need the money.
For sure. Reminder, check out the Discord community as well if you are interested in getting access to additional content there and chatting with us throughout the week. And whatever podcast platform you're listening on, we appreciate if you do all the fun things such as like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends, help us grow the show. We always appreciate that. Thanks for everybody who joined us live and the comments along the way in the chat here tonight. Also, thanks if you're listening after the fact. And just a general happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Enjoy Thanksgiving weekend, and we will be back again next week. On behalf of Adam, I'm Ryan saying thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.